Okay, so you're here because you want to get beyond the basics, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're going deep today on gradient boosting. It's this method that's really shaking things up in market research and, well, sales prediction too. Now, look, you probably know the traditional ways people analyze markets, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's be honest. The data today, it's huge. It's messy. It's always changing.
Absolutely. Just overwhelming sometimes.
So how do you actually make sense of it all? I was thinking it's like old school analysis feels a bit like using a paper map.
Okay. Yeah, he'd see that.
Useful maybe for a general direction, but it's static, right? Slow. Gradient boosting, though, that feels more like having a really smart GPS.
Constantly recalculating, adapting to traffic.
Exactly. Dynamic. Giving
Yeah.
you the fastest, most accurate route, or in this case, insight into your market. So our mission here really is to figure out what it actually means for understanding customers better.
That's a great way to put it. And, for a long time, the standard tools in market research were things like regression analysis, maybe ARIMA models for time series.
Right, the statistical staple.
Exactly. And they look for these direct, often kind of linear relationships in the data. They definitely had their place. They served a purpose.
Yep.
But when you get to the real world, consumer behavior is just, well, it's complicated. So many things influence it, all interconnected. And these older methods, they often need a lot of manual work from data scientists just to get them ready, just to make them fit the data properly.
Okay, so gradient boosting comes in. And this isn't just like a small update on those old methods, is it?
No, not at all. It's fundamentally different. It's rooted in machine learning.
So what makes it so revolutionary, I guess?
Yeah.
Especially for predicting what customers might do and how that hits the bottom line.
Well, the proof is kind of already out there with some really big companies. Think about Netflix.
Okay, yeah. My recommendations.
Right. They're constantly analyzing what you watch, what millions of others watch, to predict what you'll probably like next. That's often gradient boosting working behind the scenes.
And that keeps me watching, keeps me subscribed.
Precisely. It directly boosts engagement. Or think about Starbucks. They use similar techniques to forecast customer demand in their stores.
So they know how much coffee to brew, how many pastries to stock.
And even a giant like Walmart uses a specific type, XGBoost, for sales forecasting.
It's at store level.
Yeah, store by store. And they get much better accuracy because it can factor in things like, seasonality, special promotions, all that stuff.
Our sources suggest that this kind of machine learning, it's actually not that common yet in the wider market research industry.
That's right. It's still relatively niche, which honestly presents a big opportunity.
An edge for early adopters, you mean?
Absolutely. If you get good at this now. Well, the applications are huge. We're talking much better sales models, obviously, but also getting a much clearer read on trends, forecasting what's next, really understanding why the market is shifting, maybe even anticipating it.
And spotting those new consumer preferences before everyone else jumps on them.
Exactly, spotting them while they're still emerging.
So it's really about shifting from just describing what happened yesterday to getting a much sharper view of what's likely coming tomorrow. How does gradient boosting actually do that? Give us that better predictive power.
It's about its ability to pick up on really subtle patterns, changes across a whole range of data points. Of course, it looks at past purchases.
Standard stuff.
Standard stuff, yeah. But it also weaves in things like how much are you spending on marketing? What's buzzing on social media? What are the big economic trends doing?
So connecting lots of dots that maybe weren't connected before.
Exactly. By looking at all these interconnected pieces, gradient boosting models can predict behavior with a kind of precision that, frankly, traditional methods just often struggle to reach.
And that improved accuracy, that must lead to some serious competitive advantages, yeah?
Oh, definitely. Think about it. You can adjust your business strategy more proactively.
Not just reactive.
Right. You can tweak marketing campaigns while they're running based on real-time feedback loops, essentially.
Yeah.
And you can make sure your products, your services are actually what people want, even as those wants change.
That alignment seems key.
It is. And what's also interesting, you're seeing platforms emerge now that make this tech more, accessible.
Like you don't need a PhD in machine learning to use it.
That's the idea. Citrus Predict is specifically built for sales forecasting and behavior analysis using gradient boosting.
Okay.
The goal is to let businesses tap into this kind of advanced modeling, maybe even on demand, without necessarily needing a huge in-house data science team.
So it handles the heavy lifting.
Yeah, it can process massive amounts of time-based data, internal stuff, external feeds, and turn it into actual insights pretty quickly. It automates a lot of the really complex processing and flags the key drivers behind the trends.
Okay, so that speeds things up considerably.
Yeah.
I liked an analogy one of the sources used, comparing traditional methods for trend spotting to fishing with just a rod.
Yeah. And gradient boosting is like,
Fishing with sonar. Can you unpack that a bit?
yeah, I think that works really well. Traditional methods like the fishing rod, they're okay if you kind of already know where the fish might be, right?
Yeah.
You cast your line where it looks promising.
You have a hunch.
You have a hunch, but they can struggle when things are murky or when you're trying to find patterns that aren't immediately obvious.
Right.
Gradient boosting, the sonar, it scans a much wider area. It can detect those fainter signals, those subtle movements, the hidden patterns below the surface of consumer behavior, things the old methods might just sail right over.
Giving you a much deeper, more complete picture.
Exactly. Much more nuanced.
Okay, let's really get into the weeds then. What are the core reasons, the specific advantages that make gradient boosting a better fit for market research now?
Well, there are a few key things. First, and we've kind of touched on this, is just its power in handling really complex, interconnected data.
The messy real-world stuff.
The messy real-world stuff. Consumer choices aren't simple. They're driven by this mix of pricing, what competitors are doing, advertising, seasons, the economy, even cultural shifts, right?
Oh, many variables.
So many. And traditional methods often assume these relationships are simpler, more linear than they really are. Gradient boosting, though, it works differently. It builds a model sequentially using lots of small, simpler models, usually decision trees.
Okay, like little steps.
Kind of. Each new little model focuses on fixing the mistakes the previous ones made. It's like a team of analysts, where each one refines the work of the last one.
So it learns from errors and gets progressively better.
Precisely. And that allows it to capture those really complex, nonlinear connections that simpler models just miss. It builds a much more accurate overall picture.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like building up layers of understanding. What about data that changes over time? Sales figures, for instance, with trends and seasons.
That's the second big strength. Time series data. Traditional statistics like ARIMA often need a lot of manual tuning to handle trends and seasonality correctly. It's quite labor intensive.
Setting parameters, making adjustments.
Yeah, all that. Gradient boosting tends to automate a lot of that. It learns those repeating patterns, the weekly cycles, the yearly trends directly from the historical data itself.
So it picks up on seasonality automatically.
Largely, yes. Which saves a ton of effort, obviously, but can also lead to more accurate forecasts because it's learning directly from the data's own history.
Okay, and what about just the practical side? Real data is never perfect, right? There are gaps, missing values.
Always. And that leads to the third advantage, flexibility and robustness. Gradient boosting models are generally pretty good at handling missing data without falling over.
So less time spent manually filling gaps or dropping data.
Often, yes. They tend to need less of that intensive pre-processing, and they're built to handle large data sets pretty efficiently.
Which is a huge plus if you don't have massive computing resources or specialized data cleaners on staff.
Exactly. It saves time, reduces potential errors, makes the whole process more manageable, especially for teams with maybe limited resources.
So it's faster, handles complexity, deals with time better, and is more robust. Anything else? Something about clearer insights.
Yes, that's a really crucial point. It's not just about getting a prediction. Gradient boosting can also tell you why it made that prediction.
How does it do that?
Through something called feature importance. Essentially, the model can highlight which factors, which inputs, like a specific marketing campaign, or maybe a competitor's price change, or an economic indicator, had the biggest impact on the final forecast.
It tells you what mattered most in shaping that consumer behavior prediction. And that is incredibly valuable.
Because then you know where to focus your efforts.
Precisely. It helps you make much smarter, data-driven decisions about where to invest your time and money. You understand the levers you can actually pull.
Okay, this sounds incredibly powerful. Almost too good to be true. Must mention some downsides or reasons why it's not everywhere yet.
Oh, absolutely. There are definitely barriers. The complexity is a big one. Building these models, tuning them correctly, and then interpreting the results, it does often require specialized knowledge.
Not something every market researcher just knows how to do off the bat.
Not typically, no. Then there's the practical side, access to resources. You do need decent computational power.
To crunch all that data.
Right. And you need the right data infrastructure set up. And Honestly, there's also just inertia.
People sticking with what they know. Yeah. Familiarity with traditional methods. It can be hard to switch, even if a better tool comes along. It really highlights why we need more user-friendly tools and just better practical training to help people adopt this.
Makes sense. So, wrapping this part up, the core message seems to be that gradient boosting is a major step up for market researchers.
I think so, yes.
We're looking at getting potentially much more accurate predictions, dealing with data complexity better, less manual grunt work, and real actionable insights into what actually drives customer behavior. It's not just different, it feels like a genuine upgrade.
That sums it up well. It offers that potential for a much deeper, more dynamic grasp of your market, your customers, really getting past the limits of those older, more static ways of looking at things.
So for everyone listening, the big takeaway here is that gradient boosting is this really potent tool. It offers a chance for a much more accurate, much more dynamic feel for your market and who your customers are. It helps you get beyond the constraints of traditional methods, right?
Yeah.
Giving you potentially more precise predictions, handling that messy, complex data more effectively.
Automating the analysis of trends over time.
Yeah, and giving you those clear pointers on what factors are actually moving the needle on consumer behavior.
It really connects the dots.
So, here's something to think about. If you had that deeper, more dynamic understanding, how could that fundamentally change your strategies? How might it reshape the decisions you make day to day? Definitely something worth exploring further, I think.